One of the reasons I'm so excited for Xenoblade Chronicles X is because it has been a long time since I've actually played the game. I played it to death when it came out and never really 100%ed it, but I did get pretty far to the point that I felt pretty satisfied with what I explored. And in talking about it previously, I realized that I kind of just want to drop in, look around for a little bit, and see what I think. See if Mira still holds up as a location, especially because there's so many comparisons to Breath of the Wild now. And I have great memories of it, but does it stand up? And obviously this is only a small taste of me playing my old save file and running around a little bit, riding around in my mech a little bit, flying around. And the thing is, it still hits, and I can see how it evolved into Breath of the Wild, because you have your central hub that serves the city, and I did not run around the central hub because I have spoilers all over the place in that city, so I am not going to show it off. So instead, I immediately went out into the wide world and just started running around there, just seeing where it took me. And the first thing that becomes obvious is that you really can just go anywhere. You can see something in the distance and just run over that way, see what you can find. Enemies are all over the place of various levels, very much like other Xenoblade games, but it's so much more spread out this time, and the sizes vary so greatly, where you have these brachiosaur looking monsters hanging around, you have enemies flying in the sky, you have just regular smaller enemies going around. It is packed with just stuff to look at, whether it's the flora or fauna. And it really does suck you in almost immediately, where you want to just see what it has to offer. And I personally just saw that I had an old quest, so I decided to just head that way and see how I fared and just see what I could find if it actually showed up and what I came across along the way. And the great thing about Xenoblade Chronicles X, especially in comparison to Breath of the Wild, is that there's no fall damage. You jump pretty high, you run pretty fast, you are covering a lot of distance, which is great because these places are massive. There is so much to see in them, and yet it still feels well structured, like I'm not going to get lost. It also helps that there's 5 main sections, so you have very distinct locations, but each of those sections is also quite big. And just even going off the beaten path, where you see a cliffside and just jump down the cliffside because there's no issue, is kind of akin to running around in Breath of the Wild and finding something in the distance and I'm going to climb that. It's a different pace, but it still captures the feeling of that exploration, where if I can manage to get there, I want to check it out, especially when you're still on foot and maybe don't have access to everything. It's akin to the early game. And it is entirely possible to find outcroppings where you can jump from one to the next to the next in order to get up higher than maybe you thought you could, and explore that way. Or take on an enemy and see how you fare with them when you're small, but hey, later in the game, here's my mech. Oh, hey, I'm beating that thing way easier now. It's that sort of return and feeling yourself get stronger and being able to handle things in a better way that's, again, akin to a lot of the numbered Xenoblade titles, where you do see those big monsters and you can't quite take them on yet until you come back and are better leveled. Except this time you have a giant mech to take on the giant enemies, which again is really gratifying just to pull off. But I want to talk about the exploration more than anything else, because it really does pull you in. And yeah, it was fun to just pick a direction and just go that way. But when I went to another section of Xenoblade and just started following a path, I also realized how smartly it was designed, where you see enemies along the side. They're not as strong, but they're there. And you follow the path and like, there's a waterfall in the distance. There's a tree going out over the water. Here's a small encampment with people talking that maybe in the past gave quests that you can take on, or information that you could use to explore even further. And just following and seeing everything in the distance, what really struck me seeing all this in retrospect was how natural it all felt. It didn't feel like, oh, this is this section, or this is this specialty thing where this event is going to happen, or the like. It all felt so natural that it really did come across as a real place. Like, yeah, there's a giant waterfall, and oh man, what's that weird thing going across the waterfall? Like, what's that all about? Or here's a pool of water, and we're going to jump in and just cross it, and what's swimming around inside it as well? Or going to another section and just seeing what it has to offer, and just how the road really does weave you in to kind of highlight at least set places that you can get immediate feedback where, hey, I found this. Where does this go? Oh, cool. This is neat. Let me check this out. And it's actually sort of a guide that, again, you can see later in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. It's quite impressive in that way. Again, this came out in 2015. This is a much older game, and yet they somehow found a way to construct Mira that still kept the wildness of it. The fact that this is very much an untamed planet that you have to find a way to conquer, and you can handle it better as you go on, but it's still impressive as you go along. And fortunately, there are stages of the game where you find yourself getting better. You are very much just on foot for a long time and exploring these places, but there's so many nooks and crannies and caves and places that you can find that you might not have discovered otherwise if you're flying over or just speeding by, because you don't have a flight mode for your mech at first. It's just a car mode that does allow you to go a lot faster and explore things more easily because, well, you pretty much mastered those earlier areas. Why not get through them a lot quicker? So now you have this speed option with a better power for your battles in terms of taking on enemies. And then finally you get the flight mode. And with flight mode, just zooming around and seeing these places that were so massive before and seeing them still quite big, but minuscule, so you can see the layout of them. And of course, the detail does disappear as you go up higher, which is natural, but it's also smooth in how it does this. And you know, I'm flying up high in the sky above one of the sections of Mira, and there's enemies flying around up there. It never feels empty. There's always something to see, something to do, something to go to, whether it's a new set of enemies or collectibles in the form of the crystals that are going around. Or I happen to see a giant cocoon looking object, which, you know, I had crawled around on top of before, but hey, I saw an opening. Why not go there just to satisfy curiosity? What was in there before? So I go in, and I never did that. I never went in there before, which is insane to me because I explored what felt like every nook and cranny of Xenoblade. Even though I haven't finished everything, I just chalked it up to not doing certain quests or not beating certain super bosses, that sort of thing. And granted, inside was a super boss, so I couldn't have beat it anyway. I was not going to challenge it, especially because I'm very much out of practice when it comes to playing this game. But just on a hunch and a whim, I went into this place and found a completely new area that I never explored before. Not a huge area, but hey, it houses a lot of enemies and a new boss that I can take on, and that's wild in and of itself. Like, already, nearly 10 years later, I'm discovering something just on the fly. That's so wild to me. And if you want to see the full map, unfortunately, it is just on the Wii U gamepad, and so I took a bit of film to just show the gamepad itself, but I think that also emphasizes just how much there is to see and do. Each of those hexagons has a marker that you can explore and then fill out and then complete them, and there's a percentage there of stuff that you can do that really shows how much content there is. And I'm blown away in retrospect of just what this game accomplished. And I think that's the thing I again have to emphasize, is that you're in for an experience when you play Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition if you've not played it before. It is a gorgeous planet. It still looks good on the Wii U. It's not as detailed as maybe newer games, or maybe doesn't have the style to go with it, but I believe Definitive Edition will add that in. But just as far as the makeup of the planet, of seeing a plains or in a desert or a jungle or what have you, it really does suck you in, as well as the crazy music that it plays constantly with all the vocal themes. I just did this on a whim just because I wanted to see what it was like. Because usually with remasters, I don't want to play the original because I want to save that brand new experience, that rediscovery for the new game. But I'm glad I checked out the original Xenoblade Chronicles X, if only just for a little bit, to get a sense of the exploration element. Because, yeah, it still holds up. It's still fun. It still has value. And I'm not saying if you haven't played it before that you should go ahead and get the original right now. No, absolutely still wait. But if you have the original and it's been a while since you've played, maybe hook up that Wii U, maybe check it out a little bit and see where you left off, just to get a sense of what you can experience within this game, what you left off with. And, you know, it's on the Switch. You can play it portable. That sounds like a pretty nice way to just chip away at all this stuff and see what it has to offer, and hope that certain things have been improved as far as quest markers and discovering things, and just, you know, having those really great quality of life improvements that Xenoblade 1 Definitive Edition had. I'm all the more excited for this game. I think we are in for something special. I think it still holds up as one of the Wii U's best, and I am so happy that we are finally getting it. So thank you for letting me gush even further about all this. I'm curious what all of you think. Have you returned to Xenoblade X recently? What do you think of the exploration if you've done it before? Let me know in the comments, and of course you can support us further over on Patreon at patreon.com/gvgaming, or just hitting that subscribe button and ringing that bell helps us a ton as well. So thank you so much for me just gushing even further about this game. I can't wait till everybody else gets to check it out if you haven't tried it before. But until next time, bye.